Here's a question. If you had a car bill for $156, would you rather pay that $156 1 month from now or pay $157 today? There's an experiment some psychologists did to test people's stress of waiting. Would you rather pay $1 more to get rid of the bill sooner? Everybody out there who keeps books is like, yes, get rid of it. Would you rather finish up your project, right? You're going to go on vacation tomorrow and you have 1 hour left of this project, this thing you're working on. Would you rather finish this, but you don't get paid for that hour? Or let it sit the whole time you're on vacation and come back and finish the hour then? Yeah, no way. Really what that's about is the completion of the project. It's about waiting to see the project completed, and we don't want to wait. We would rather do it now. On average, people would accept 15% more work for no increase in pay so that they could get done sooner. You still have to stay at work the same amount of time, but you got that project done. On average, people would take 15% more. This stress of waiting that these psychologists found would pull people to go do more work just to get done, even if there's no financial or even scheduling improvement. It's the same reason that when you and I go to get groceries from the car, we put as many on our arms as we can, and then we have to trudge back to the house slower. It probably would be faster if we would just do 2 at a time and run, but we don't do that. We just want to get it done. We don't like waiting. We don't want to wait. And there's something that actually happens if you learn the reason why. You think, okay, I have to wait through this. I know I have to. There's no way around it, but if I knew why, it would help me. And that is only about half as true as you think. Statistically, when they go back and they track people's aggression or their frustration, it only everything's, well, if I knew that, oh man, that would make things so much easier. And it does make things easier, but it's in a very limited amount. Why do I have to wait? Why do I have to wait? It's why when you get in the car and the last time you hit traffic, this happened to you, you were sitting there and you don't just sit there and wait for it, you do this. Because if I knew, that maybe would make me more patient, but it won't. Why do I have to wait? Why is God making you wait? See, he doesn't have to, right? He could change it. But yet, somehow, in his sovereignty and his control, God is making you wait through what you're waiting on. And we all have something, right? We're waiting for something to end. We're waiting for something to start. We're waiting for something to arrive. We're waiting for a solution. We're waiting for healing. Why is God making you wait? We're going to learn at least one answer, and that's going to be out of Luke 2. So if you have your Bible with you, please open up. If not, there's a Bible right in front of you in the chair below. Feel free. Luke 2, we're going to work through this. Now, back in seminary, I was bit by a Baptist, and every now and again that flares up, and you're going to notice that today. That's why I'm going to have 3 points that are all alliterated with the letter P, and I'll get some cream, and it'll go down, and we'll be back to normal. But for today, starting in Luke 2, verses 22, says this: when the time came for the purification rites required by the law of Moses, Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. So he's just a little baby here. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. So here's what we see. Very first, there's a lot of technical language, but the first point, right, get your alliterated hats on. Jesus is being presented as Messiah. He's being presented as Messiah. And this is where there's a bit of a technical work that Luke is doing. If you read through these verses, Luke's pulling out it's very law-oriented language, right? There's the law and purification and consecration and Moses and all the technical terms he's using really make you think of this sort of legal standing. And that's on purpose. Luke is trying to point out that Jesus is being formally presented as the Messiah to God. He's being consecrated, and there's a moment here where it's happening. Now, keep that in your mind. We're going to come back to that. I want to take a little sidebar here to talk about Mary and Joseph. They get just a tiny little bit of airtime. Mary and Joseph are showing up, and we have hindsight. We know where this story goes. We know who Jesus is, that he's the Son of God, that he's the Messiah, all these things, this is what he's going to do. They don't know most of that. They know Jesus is special, right? They had some big scary angels tell him that. And then they had these interactions along the way that just piece by piece are kind of filling out who Jesus is. They don't know all that he's going to do. They don't know exactly. They know he's from God. He's the Son of God. What exactly does that mean? And so you're going to watch Mary and Joseph kind of trudge along, really just doing the best they can with what they have, figuring it out, and learning along the way. Okay? You'll see that here in a minute. But what I want to point out is just, this isn't the main thrust of the passage, but I do think it's an important encouragement. These are two first-time parents. They have no idea what they're doing. So they just do what they think they're supposed to do. Isn't that what we're all doing? Right? Like they just are like, I think, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to kind of go to the temple, right? So let's just do that. Parents have this pressure that we place on ourselves, maybe others put it on us, but we have this concept that we need to come up with the recipe for like the perfect kid, right? And so we're kind of trying to parent their whole life today, but there's so much of it, and it was just obvious to me in this passage. Mary and Joseph have no idea where anything is going to go, and so they just do the right thing today. And yet God is going to use this moment with really significant emphasis. Like this will be a significant moment as Jesus is presented as the Messiah in the temple. Like it's a big deal. But Mary and Joseph had no idea. They were just like, I think you're supposed to do this with a baby, right? You're supposed to go to the temple. So that's what we'll do. And looking here, you can tell by the type of sacrifice that they were poor. Right, so the consecrated sacrifice wasn't like, hey, things are going badly, like they're such a sinner, and we're going to atone for that and kind of get this forgiveness in the system of sacrifice. That's not what this is. The firstborn consecration was to set aside and to say, hey, I'm dedicating this child to you. This is what's important. This is you get to have all the firstborns. That's like way back in Israel's history where God said, I'm going to redeem you. And Israel is supposed to be like sort of the firstborn of God. And so out of this firstborn child, like all the firstborn males were supposed to be consecrated to God. And so what he did is God set up the system where the tribe of Levi, all the Levites would kind of take that place. So now you have a whole tribe that says they're going to serve in the temple. They're going to basically do the ministry work, if you want to call it that, sort of the formal positions. And they are going to stand in the place of all the other firstborn males that should be consecrated or kind of given to God in service. And so here, they're showing up saying, hey, God, we're a part of this system. Yahweh, we recognize that these belong to you, that all of these kids belong to you, and we're dedicating his life to you, but also aware that his work, like his life payment, is going to be held in the stead in the work of the tribe of Levi. So they're stepping into this, and it's a good thing. It's a great moment, but it really is just, I don't want to call it rote, but it's just what you did. You were supposed to. A lot of y'all got up this morning and came to church because it's what we did, right? Like it was just what we were supposed to do. And that's not always a bad thing. So as parents, I just want to do this like little moment of encouragement here where you don't know the day that you bring your kid to Sunday school and they were rotten at home and it took forever and you finally got them out the door and then they heard the gospel and it made sense. You just don't know how significant a day is going to be where you do the work and it's tired and it's late, but you bring them to Wednesday night and they get to have a connection with one of our amazing volunteers who just convinces them that they are loved. And those are the sort of things that really do shape us, but they're all seeds that we cast out there. So here's the encouragement. We know that you don't know what you're doing. Okay? And the truth is we just all don't. So you show up today and you do the right thing for your kid today. And it's not the pressure of their whole life. It's the seeds. It's the faithfulness. And you just trust Jesus with the outcomes. Amen? All right. I'm not supposed to talk about that. I'm supposed to talk about the passage. So we're going to go back to the passage. Theologically, there's some significant implications about Jesus in this moment. He's being presented as the Messiah. Now, what this follow me here. Israel, you go back in the Old Testament, there's this a lot of language that God said, hey, I'm going to choose you, Israel. You're going to be like my firstborn. You're going to be the nation that I choose to go out and do these things. You're going to help establish my kingdom. You're going to be the ones that people come to learn about me. You're going to be the ones that reflect and represent me to the world, and then they don't do it. When Jesus shows up and is consecrated, he does do it. He's the Messiah. He's the firstborn. He's the stepping into the role and perfecting it that Israel never could do. He's doing what Israel couldn't. And this is the beginning of that. And here's the other reality, is that all the design that God put in place for Israel, all the great things, all the blessings that were available, all the opportunities that they failed out, I think we could maybe track your history and find some similarities. That God has given you a lot of opportunities that you've squandered. And God has called you into a design that's rich and full, and you've neglected it. The reality is it's a great news for Israel that somebody stepped up to be the Messiah because they needed that, but it's also great news for us because we couldn't do it either. Jesus is presented as the Messiah, and this is good news. Because it turns out we needed one of those. Look at Luke 2:25, excuse me. We're going to take a big chunk here. It says, now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout, and he was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he had seen the Lord's Messiah. Moved by the Spirit, he went into the temple courts, where the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him what the custom of the law required. Simeon took him in his arms and praised God, saying, Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. The child's father and mother marveled at what was being said about them. See what I'm saying? They're learning as they go, right? Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, this child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed. And a sword will pierce your own soul, too. There was also a prophet, Anna, the daughter of Penuel, in the tribe of Asher. She was very old and had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then was a widow for 84 years. She never left the temple, but worshiped night and day, fasting and praying. Coming up to them at that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. So here's what happens. We kind of have this twist in the story. They're showing up to the temple, and they're going to consecrate him, and you kind of expect that to just be what it is. But then these remarkable characters show up. Remember, Mary and Joseph don't have the luxury of knowing where all this goes, and so everything they learn here is new. Simeon and Anna come and they give us the second alliteration. Jesus is prophesied as Messiah. They show up and they pronounce these prophecies, these truths from God. These really are remarkable people. Now, Simeon is described as devout. And if you've been paying attention, that's exactly how Zechariah was described, remember? He's a good dude. He's a Yahweh follower. He's tracking with God. He loves God. Not only that, there's something very specific in the way it says he's waiting, looking forward. That's a positive way of saying waiting, right? He's looking forward. He's waiting for the consolation of Israel. Consolation, what does that mean? If you're as great an athlete as me, then you know what a consolation prize is, right? So it's like, hey, we're glad you showed up so that they could beat somebody. You know, it's like, this is, thanks for being alive. You know, here you go. Consolation means comfort. Like, hey, we want to comfort that you're really bad at this, and like, here's a little blue ribbon. To be comforted, he's waiting for the consolation, the comfort of God to come to Israel. Israel has been alone, it feels, for a very long time. They have these promises, and they have this hope, and they have these things that they think are going to happen, and but the puzzle just doesn't make sense. Just the pieces just don't go together, and right now they're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and there's just nothing, and he's just waiting that God would come and comfort Israel. Now, what's really interesting about this particular waiting It says that he's waiting for the consolation of Israel because that comes from God. Here's my point, that Simeon's hope, Simeon's waiting, the pressure of this is actually connected to God's plan. It doesn't say that he's waiting, that his plan would finally come to fruition so that he could finish his goals out. Simeon's hope is actually directly connected to God's plan. And I think that would keep him waiting, but it would allow him to wait forever and ever and ever because he trusts God. As opposed to maybe you have a plan and your hope is in your plan. In which case, all the pressure's on you and there's a lot of reason to be discouraged. But his hope is in the consolation of Israel, that God would come and comfort when God said he would come and comfort. Apparently, somewhere on the line here, he knew that he would see the Messiah. Somewhere, the angel showed up, probably large and scary, as we've talked about before, and he told Simeon, hey, listen, you're going to see the Messiah. Like, I know this is what you're waiting for. I know this is what you want. And I just want to comfort you that in your life, at some point before you die, you will physically be able to see the coming Christ. Now, wouldn't that just kind of change your day, Right? Wouldn't that sort of like, okay, you wake up the next day, and every day you're like, today might be the day, It would turn you into an extrovert. It would, I promise, right? Because you go out, you're like, I got to go. I got to go meet some people today. I got to go find them. Every day, today might be the day. Did you know that Jesus is still going to come back? You know that it still might be today? Maybe it changes your day. Now, I want to take a minute, swivel over to Anna. Anna is a devout woman, just a woman of incredible devotion. And we can kind of take a little guess at her life circumstance. She's probably married around 14. That would be about the average, the custom at the time. Married 7 years, and then is widowed for 84. So she's around 105, which is not actually crazy. There's other verified records there's a woman named Judith who lived past 105 during this time. Maybe they were friends. They had a knitting club or something. She has 105 years, 84 of those where she's dedicated to praying in the temple. Like, she has a life of absolute devotion day in, day out, longer than many people even get to live. Like, that's just her focus. And Luke does some really interesting things here. We could get kind of nerdy with the words and how he's describing her. And there's a tie-in between her name and Hannah in the Old Testament, who was a woman of prayer. And the way he uses this representation of her family name goes back to a prophecy about Bethlehem. There's all these like intricate little things. But what Luke is doing is painting a picture of a woman who's an absolute saint. She's just a wonderful woman. She's just a treasure. And she has spent her whole life waiting. She has spent her whole life praying. And I just think about what that day would be, that you wake up and you're like, man, today I just need to go pray. I'm just going to go be with God. I'm going to sit, I'm going to pray, I'm going to praise, I'm going to weep, this is my ministry, this is who I am. I'm going to be there every day. I'm just going to wait on the Lord. It's incredible. 84 years of strict devotion. As a prophet working, this is amazing. Why did she have to wait? Why did God, think about that. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to line her up with such a long life but yet he did. Why did she have to wait? Here's why. Because waiting shapes your wanting. Come on, get back. Help me out here. There you go. Waiting shapes your wanting. Simeon had been waiting expectantly. He had been shaped by this longing, this looking forward. Anna had been set on this devoted path of this is what I'm going to do every day. And it shapes their heart. It shapes what you're devoted to. Waiting shapes because it defines what you think is worth the wait. If you want to wait for something, I mean, we do this to our kids all the time. No, you have to wait. Guaranteed tomorrow, Christmas, that's said 1,000 times. No, you have to wait. Don't put it back. Put it back. Put it back. You have to wait. And we do that for a number of reasons. We do it because they're not ready. We do it because it's good for them to wait. We do it because they're a little too excited, We do it because they're not like really excited enough. We do it because they need to develop a hunger, right? No, you can't eat right now because then you won't eat supper later. We make people wait so it shapes what they want. Where do you think we learn that from? It's what God does for us. He forces us to wait through things that we would rather not wait for so that it shapes what we would define as this is worth being devoted to. How many times has this happened to you where you wait and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. And then you get there and you're like, it's not that great. What happened in between those? It didn't change, right? A lot of times we grow and what we think we want changes. This is one of the holes in our institutionalized education system where people go in and I'm going to get this degree. And then most of the way through they figure out, I don't want to do this. Well, what happened? The degree has been the same, the job's been the same, but you've changed. And so they come out and now they have this degree that they don't know what to do with. I don't want to do that. Yeah, but the waiting for it is really what changed you. Changed what you wanted. It changed what you thought you wanted. Waiting shapes your wanting. Teaches you what to be devoted to and what's worth it. Listen to Simeon. I specifically want to kind of pull out what he has been waiting for here. Verse 31, it says, or 29, Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. I can die now. That's it. My life's fulfilled. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you've prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. The child's father and mother marveled at what was said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, this child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too. It's not particularly like baby shower language, It's like some pretty negative sounding things. It's like, dude, you just met this baby. What do you know? That's some harsh stuff. Well, actually, there's significantly negative things here. So let's put it in line with our alliteration, okay? Jesus is presented as Messiah. He's prophesied as Messiah. And then he's praised and proclaimed as Messiah. Yeah, I got a double in on that last one. 4 out of 3. He's praised and proclaimed as Messiah. So God is praised here for sending the Messiah, but then there's these specific negative things that are on the forefront. The reality is that the slew of negative sounding things really have a lot to do with Jesus' ministry. That we sing a lot of carols about this, Jesus guy. But his effect on people is pretty divisive. He has a dividing effect. That when Jesus shows up, there's a reality that he says things that we would rather not hear. And he tells us things that we don't want to know. And he asks us to love things that we hate. And he asks us to hate things that we love. He calls us to do things we thought we would never do. And then he does all of this and says it's in love. And a lot of people reject that. They hear that message and they say, no. That can't be love. They're going to stub their toe on that rock and it's going to cause them to stumble. No, that can't be love because this is what I think love is. No, that can't be right because I don't want to. See, if God was really good, he would just want to give me what I want. That's not what Jesus does. He says he's a sign that they reject, meaning the message he has, he pops up and says, this is the message, this is what you need to know, and they say, no, I reject it. I reject it. I don't want it. I'm not going to do this. So here's the sort of the poetry in that prophecy is that when they reject it, it reveals who they are. And that's who they're judged to be. Right? We all have certain things we pretend our things are great and things are, but when it comes to Jesus, what you think about Jesus is what you get judged on. Primarily. Jesus shows up, says, this is the life. This is the light. This is the way. And people will say no, and it will reveal their thoughts, and from there, God will judge them. We push aside God's Son, who's chosen to bring us life, and that's what we are guilty for. Here's the other thing that Simeon proclaims about Jesus is that he will be this light, and he says a light of revelation to the Gentiles, or a light of revelation to the nations, to the peoples. That there's going to be this revealing that the light clicks on, and we can see clearly what it is that God has. So there's this plan of salvation. God says, okay, I'm going to save people, and it's going to happen in this way. And if you're in Israel, right, and you were born into this, and you know the law, and it was just, you were steeped in it, it was the water you swam in, you're like, okay, I get it. It makes sense to me. It's who I am. It's my language. It's my God. It's my life. I get it. But when Jesus comes, he allows a light bulb moment to happen across all peoples. All peoples, because they know who Jesus is, can then have the revelation. It can be revealed to them how to know God. It's a revelation of this plan, of this salvation, of this good news for everyone. The other thing that he brings up is that he says it's going to be a light of glory for Israel. Now, this is what that means, that Simeon's pointing out Israel's greatest claim is not the splitting of the Red Sea. Israel's greatest claim is not that they have Abraham or they have Moses. It's not that they had King David or King Solomon's wisdom or this wonderful conquering of these nations. It wasn't because that God spoke to them from the mountain or because of their greatest claim, the glory of Israel, the pride that they should stand on is that from them God will send the Messiah. From them, the hero of the story is going to come, and that's what we're looking forward to. That's the honor. Now, there are other things that God uses Israel for, which is wonderful, but the glory of Israel, like the purpose, like the swelling of all the music of the Old Testament crescendos to the person of Jesus. And it's not because they were good enough. It's not because Israel was special enough. It's not because they had certain laws they kept better than everybody else. It was because God is gracious. And in fact, some of the waiting that we learn later in the New Testament, the hardening of Israel's hearts is that God had been making them wait. Now, what do we know about waiting? Waiting shapes our wanting. God made them wait so that they would begin to learn to love him, to begin to want him. And when he shows up, nationally at least, they reject him. They didn't want him. They didn't want God. Now, as Simeon hands baby Jesus back to Mary, and Anna probably kisses him on the head, and they watch Mary and Joseph walk away. They go back to waiting. That was it, right? Like that was the moment that they've been waiting for, and this is going to be the comfort of Israel, and this is going to be the good news, and this is, yes, he's going to save us, and bye. That God had brought them through this and shaped them. These two have lived a faithful life of expectation and waiting and showing up and doing the right things every day. And it shaped them to be prepared for what God had for them. And here's the thing. I don't think they were disappointed. And where we're sitting right now, it kind of feels like, oh, wah, wah, wah. But I don't think that's how they felt. Like he said, now I can die in peace. Like I don't know if I've ever had that feeling. Waiting shapes your wanting. Why has God kept you waiting? We just all have things we're waiting for. We're waiting, and we don't know why. Why is God still making me wrestle with this sin? Why is God still making me wait for the pain to stop? Why is God still making me long for these things and others don't have to, but I'm just here wishing it was different? Why do I have to wait? Why do I have to wait for my scars to fade? Why do I have to wait? Waiting shapes your wanting. And I don't know your heart, but I imagine it's a lot like mine in that it needs to learn some things. It needs to be taught. It needs to learn to love some things less. It needs to learn to love some other things more. It needs to learn to hate some things. It needs to learn to be content with some things. It needs to learn to forgive. It needs to learn to prioritize. Your heart has a lot to learn. Maybe it needs to learn how to live without. Waiting shapes your wanting. What if the answer hasn't come and the solution hasn't appeared and the darkness hasn't lifted and the pain hasn't stopped because you haven't learned it yet? It's not like the mean dad, stay in your room till supper, just waiting there, What if it's not that? What if this is the sovereign, kind, gracious, loving Creator who knows exactly how to situate you, who knows exactly how to shape the environment so that you have to wait because it's what you need? What if it was 84 years of loneliness to learn to be content with Him? What if it was a lifelong expectation of longing and this deliverance, that you want freedom, and you do it just to learn that God has perfect timing? You might have to wait. But here's an encouragement. You don't have to wait alone. We're all waiting. But we can wait together. Right? This whole church is just filled with people that are slowly being convinced that God's way is better than their way. Right? This is just the thing that we do every day, that we're being slowly convinced that my plan is, I guess, I need to let it go a little bit because God's plan's better. That's all we're doing. We're doing it in a little bit different directions, but we're all learning that same thing. Huh? And what if we were able to just wait together? And the encouragement that we could offer one another, that'd be pretty rich. It'd be pretty rich if you didn't have to pretend that your life was going great. Yeah. It'd be pretty great if you could actually say, like, hey, yeah, that's awful. I'm sorry. I'm waiting as well. I have some things that I really wish were different. Being able to wait together. In fact, I think that's how it's designed. I like to think that Simeon and Anna were friends. Yeah? They're just hanging out together, waiting. I want to encourage you that waiting is worth it. Waiting on God's timing is worth it.